cannot run A/B tests. You want to get insights and validate your ideas through data and user research. So take a step down from the hierarchy of evidence, but still you want to validate. Try to validate your ideas and your hypothesis with your users instead of just implementing them without validating something.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Click to Buy. In today's episode, we'll be discussing alternatives to A/B testing and debunking the myth that all best practices work for all brands when it comes to CRO. To answer these questions, I've brought on today Ruben. Ruben, how are you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're super excited to have you. And for those of my audience who don't know you, maybe you can give a little intro about who you are and what it is that you do.
Sure. So, like you said, my name is Ruben. I've been in the business of data optimization, experimentation for over 14 years. Currently, I am the lead consultant at Online Dialogue, which is an experimentation agency based in the Netherlands. I also have my own company, Conversion Ideas, and have the goal to help people learn and excel in conversion rate optimization for affordable prices. Now with over 12,000, almost 13,000 students worldwide in my online courses, and having fun with great people, great websites, great organizations every day.
Wow, so you really like live and breathe data and CRO like every part of the day.
Yeah, actually, yes, because I think it's not necessarily a way of working. I think it's also a
Uh-huh.
mindset. As I always try to optimize my personal life as well. Experimenting, sports, food, sleep, meditation, journaling. So yeah, I do it a lot and makes me happy.
I love it. Well, we'll probably get a little bit into that mindset as we go through some of our hot topics today. To get us kind of
Perfect.
warmed up, I always like to ask my guests kind of a hot topic like this or that and just get their hot take on different CRO practices. So for you, I thought we could discuss kind of different ways of getting to know your customer. So I've had some guests who say the better way, if they only could pick one between customer surveys versus customer interviews, they would prefer a customer survey. Other guests have preferred the interview, which is maybe more qualitative, but we might get different insights. If you could only pick one, would you pick customer surveys or customer interviews, and why?
Um, that's a very good question. I would say then a very good survey. And it should be very good because, of course, the advantage of an interview is that you can dig deeper and ask deeper questions, which will
Mm-hmm.
get you more insights. But it's also a lot
Mm-hmm.
more work, and you cannot interview a significant amount of people. With surveys, if you have the right audience, right respondents, and you ask the right question, you can probably get a lot more insights from it, from a lot more people. But it's they're both equally important, I would say.
True. Okay. So ideally, you have the best of both worlds, a little bit of everything. But maybe if you're
Yeah.
like just starting, it's good to try to get like a lot of different data in at once, which like a survey is maybe a little bit more helpful from, and then dive deep in those interviews when you have the resources for it.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're a bit stressed for time, or you want to
Yeah.
start running experiments as soon as possible, then setting a survey live, and while responses are coming, you can do a data research or a scientific research.
Hmm.
So I guess it's more time efficient.
Yeah, and kind of bouncing off, I guess, that answer, I'm really curious, in your experience, what do you think is the best way for brands that have limited site traffic to approach testing?
Surveys and interviews. No,
There we go.
of course, you want to run A/B tests as much as possible if you can. If you have sufficient traffic and
Hmm.
sufficient conversions to have a data-driven, statistically valid A/B test, then definitely do A/B testing. But in science and like also in conversion rate optimization, there's something as a hierarchy of evidence, which states like
Hmm.
the risk you take when based decisions on research. On the top, there's meta-analysis, which you also see in science, right? There's lots of papers on one theory, and then someone comes, puts them all together, and creates a new theory. That's meta-analysis. Below that is
Hmm.
the randomized controlled trial or A/B tests. And below that is data and basically user research. So if you cannot run A/B tests, you want to get insights and validate your ideas through data and user research. So take a step down from the hierarchy of evidence, but still you want to validate. And it's crucial for traffic with or website with limited traffic, but
Mm-hmm.
also for testing very big innovative ideas. Right before you start building huge features, huge new digital products, you want to validate your idea, your assumptions using user research as much as possible. And the same for websites that have insufficient traffic. You want to do user research to validate your idea. So that could be usability testing, 5-second testing, preference testing. Um, Whatever you do, try to validate your ideas and your hypothesis with your users instead of just implementing them without validating something.
Gotcha. So there should always be the customer or kind of user element to it, even if you don't have enough of that traffic to do maybe a larger scale. As you said, I like how you really put it together. Like you're working your way down the hierarchy. Like if you can't do
Yes.
A/B testing, what's that like rung below that that you can work on? Maybe you can dig a little deeper into one of those kind of test methods you recommended, like 5-second testing or usability testing for maybe people who are newer to these kind of ideas.
Yeah, of course. So 5-second testing is fun. It's basically you show a design, let's say, of your most important landing page. So let's say you have a very
Mm-hmm.
important landing page and you have the impression it's underperforming. Then you do research
Mm-hmm.
to come up with ideas to improve it. So you create a new design with new content, new visuals on that page, and you show the original page and a new page for 5 seconds, just above the fold. You show it for 5 seconds to someone, first original page and then the new page, for instance, or one person gets only one design, and then you can ask questions like, "Hey, what's this website about? What can you do here? Why should you do it here? And where would you click first, for instance?" And that's to see
Mm-hmm.
if people understand the value proposition, the brand, the website, and see if they get a good first impression. And of course, as we know, a first impression sticks. So
Yeah.
through a 5-second test, it's very nice to validate that new landing page. With the usability test, it's different. That's perfect for testing usability. You invite someone over, or you do it remotely, and you give them an assignment to complete on the website. And it should be a personal assignment, so this person would behave like he does at home or she does at home. So if you sell
Mm-hmm.
fashion, you could ask someone to come up with a personal story. Maybe there's a party coming up, and this person still needs to buy clothes for that party, and then have that person find clothes for that party on your website, see how this person navigates through your website, see where this person gets stuck or is confused, and learn from that, solve those issues, and then run new usability tests. And that's how you can optimize and validate without A/B testing.
Yeah, well, thanks. That was very clear and I think super helpful. I'm really curious. So, I had a previous guest on, Viket, actually, who works and helps the brands that she works for in the pet care space with a lot of usability testing. And she mentioned like a test where they noticed, for example, the text had to be bigger because everyone was always like zooming in or like
Yeah,
doing things like that. I wonder if you have any kind of memorable tests that you've run that kind of come to mind.
yeah. It's I did a lot of usability tests, or my teams did a lot of usability
Hmm.
tests, and that can be for Donald Duck with little
Yeah.
children playing games, which is absolutely fantastic. It's so much fun to see that. To furniture shops, I've seen a lot of usability tests, but one that still sticks with me is a usability test for a huge e-commerce website selling furniture and
Hmm.
household stuff. And the list page, we knew it seemed to be underperforming, but we couldn't really on mobile, but we
Mm.
couldn't really grasp what it was. And during usability tests, we noticed that everyone scrolled past the filter. It was there in the screen, big enough, but still people scrolled past it. It was something we didn't think of. Then we started A/B testing because we did have sufficient traffic for A/B testing, and we made it just stand out more, give different colors, some text around it, and then people started using it. I think we tripled the number of users who used
Wow.
the filters, and it resulted in a massive increase in conversion rates. And that was a nice example of doing a good usability test, and if possible, A/B testing it to validate the idea even more, and seeing a big revenue increase.
Thanks. That's a great example also of how you showed like how the hierarchy, how it all kind of fits together. Like you
Yeah,
saw one issue, now you're able to test it, validate it, and see like tangible results, which I think is what everyone always hopes for when they get CRO advice. But also brings me to my next kind of hot topic I'd love to chat with you today. I see a
yeah.
lot of
One more
posts
thing
out
to
there
note
about,
about the last
oh
sorry,
yeah,
one more thing to note
oh
about
please
last
go
answer.
for it.
If you cannot do the A/B test after usability test,
Yeah.
uh, make, in my case in this example, make it stand
Uh-huh.
out more. Do the text, do make a different color, makes it out more, and then do a usability test again to see if people start using it. So if you cannot
Okay,
A/B
yeah.
test again, validate it through a new usability test to validate the changes and your assumptions.
Nice. So if you don't have enough traffic to do that A/B test, you can just run another usability test. But I like what you said there about trying to make a big change, because I think that's also kind of key here, like something that's noticeable enough to really prove that this was the reason.
Yeah. Yeah, so check your data,
Uh-huh.
do more usability tests to keep validating and learning from every
Mm-hmm.
change. Even though you cannot do A/B testing, do check your data and do keep on doing user testing,
Yes, the
user
answer is
research.
in the
Yes,
data.
exactly.
uh, yeah, so our next kind of hot topic, which kind of ties into this, is a lot of people make these big promises like, do this one thing and your brand will grow by X amount of sales by this one best practice. But I think I've heard that this is a bit of a myth, that not every best practice works for everyone in CRO. So I'd love to know what are your thoughts on this, and have you ever seen a best practice that didn't work as expected?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, enough. I've seen, I think, thousands of A/B tests, so I'm still surprised every single time. But no, I think there's nothing wrong with best practices, right? If you start
Mm-hmm,
somewhere,
sure.
yeah, why not start with best practices, and then learn how to do research and learn more about your users? But it's totally fine to start with best practices.
Okay.
But you have to again validate those best practices,
Mm.
because there's never a tip that can guarantee an uplift in conversion. What can work for one website, what does miracles for one website and one product, can not work or even backfire on other websites, simply because the website is different, the market is different, the audience on your page is different, um, the season could be different. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many external factors that you have no control over. And I've seen, for instance, the biggest surprises are, for instance, when social proof doesn't work, even though it's a highly rated
Oh.
product. Because everybody always thinks like social proof, that is
Mm-hmm.
the best practice that always works. But there
Yeah.
are cases that it could backfire. For instance, when motivation to purchase is extremely high already, and there's no
Mm-hmm.
more convincing needed, adding social proof is just distraction. It's just distracting
Mm-hmm.
people in their journey to eventually make that purchase. It could even make them doubt when there's maybe a 4-star review. So it could backfire then. It could also backfire if it's something that people are not too proud of. For instance, getting a loan, or a
Mm-hmm.
uh, a, a, a session to quit smoking, drinking, save more money. Um, then you don't want to be. In some cases, you don't want to be part of the big group, because it's something you're not too proud of. So social proof could definitely backfire there as well.
Mm.
So yeah, again, always validate ideas.
I think that's a good filter to put on the kind of advice. Like, best practices can be a good place to start, especially when you're starting out, but you need to validate and test it to see if it works with your page and your strategy and your audience. Especially your answer about social proof. That's definitely something I haven't heard before. So, definitely, I'm very curious to hear more about that. Like, is this in this particular industry or type
Mhm.
of product that you've seen this in your previous tests?
Not necessarily related to a specific market, but I've also
Mm-hmm.
seen, before I was a consultant at Online Dialogue, I used to work as a manager of a centralized CRO and UX department in a huge publishing company in Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
And they have many different brands and magazines, and also a lot of magazines aimed towards the female audience. but still the difference
Hmm.
there, of course. And we had an experiment on one website that worked very well. Then we copied it to another, worked perfectly. The third time, again, it worked very nice. The fourth time, for a fourth female magazine, it completely dropped the conversions. Um,
Wow.
in a validated A/B test with sufficient traffic and sufficient conversion. So, like I said, I've been involved in thousands of experiments, but I still get surprised.
Yeah, well, it keeps you, I guess, interested or intrigued in your day to
Yeah.
day. I imagine that's quite nice. Especially, I like what you said about having this experimentation mindset. I'm curious, have you been inspired by any like campaigns or tests that you've seen other brands do that like come to mind?
I've always been. I'm always looking at others and inspired by others. That's why we have and a lot of people sharing stuff in our industry, and that
Uh-huh.
makes it like a wonderful industry to be in. Um, like inspired. So my personal journey, I started with interest in
Mm-hmm.
personal growth and human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So that inspired me. Lots of personal growth stuff and gurus there. And that naturally led me to interest in human behavior optimization. And that made my journey start at conversion rate optimization. And of course, within conversion rate optimization, also given the time where I started, yeah, it was of course you look a lot
Mm-hmm.
at Booking.com. Um, and one of the founders of both founders of Online Dialogue were already A/B testing even before testing tools came out. So those inspired me, and I'm very happy to work with them right now. But there's always big companies, small companies that
Yeah.
inspire me, and yeah, I can learn from everyone.
Cool. I definitely enjoy sometimes seeing different things or examples flow by, especially when you see someone who's like just posting about it because they bought something and then they thought it was like such a good experience that they had to post about it. I think that's when you know like you're doing something right when it comes to like the customer journey,
Yeah, exactly,
which
exactly.
I guess at the end of the day is what you want is someone who can just slide through and it's not even a consideration. Well, unless it's of course a product that deals with a great deal of financial or thought forethought. But for the majority of these quick purchases, ideally it's like, oh, I found what I want and it was a great, easy time to do it.
Exactly, exactly. And I think the thing that really inspires me now is, for instance, huge experiments that involve several departments, even departments like
Mm.
a legal department, for instance, because there are a lot of law changes regarding privacy, and then working together with legal to oblige the law, but also make it as best as possible for the user. And then legal all of a sudden becomes fan of experimentation, which is totally awesome, of course. Or experiments that follow up on a big user research, for instance. It's also very nice to
Mm.
see that
I'm curious, do you have,
companies more and more start
do,
listening to their users. Go ahead.
yeah, do you have any advice on like if you're gonna like go inside a company and give them some CRO advice for a day, would you have any advice on how they can kind of encourage this experimentation mindset within a company so that hopefully you do have these kind of different departments seeing how they can benefit from it?
Yeah, I'm a consultant, so the answer is always it depends.
Yeah, I imagine you
Um,
know, yeah.
Now, if it's for one day and one quick tip, of course, every organization is different with different legacies.
Mm-hmm.
But become friends with customer service because
Okay.
they have a lot of
That's a good
knowledge
one.
about your target audience, about your website visitor. They talk to them every single day. They get all the questions, the complaints, the praises, and you can really use those insights to optimize your website and your digital products.
What do you think most businesses do wrong when it comes to their customer journey?
Implement and change stuff based on gut feeling, or simply best practices. That's something that people need to understand. Like doing research and
Mm-hmm.
validation, experimentation. It's not just to find those nice uplifts and those nice winners. It's also for mitigating risk. Um, if you implement
Mm-hmm.
everything, you're gonna make changes that will hurt the customer experience and it will hurt your revenue or your main KPIs, whatever they may be. So if there's something that's wrong, then it's just simply implementing everything without a good validation strategy behind it.
I think that's a great advice for anyone out there. Think about just really think about it before you just implement. Because as you said, it definitely is risky to be changing too many things. Another guest I spoke with talked about places she's worked and helping their CRO where they had so many flashy animations and like moving things going on that it was suddenly totally distracting people from
Yeah.
looking at the product and finding the information they wanted to find. So I think that's definitely been the theme of this episode: just validate, validate, validate.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, yeah. Those everyone has to understand that like ballpark figures is that 25% of the changes result in a positive uplift, 25%
Mm-hmm.
result in a negative effect, and 50% of
Mm-hmm.
change don't do anything. That means two things. If you implement everything, 75% what you're gonna do is it does nothing. It's useless. It even decreases conversions. Your growth is stuck because you have 25%, which is good change, and 25% is bad change, and 50% is nothing. So you're stuck around the zero. But if you
Mm.
validate and you only implement those 25%, that's a positive uplift, then you start growing as a business. And that's when you start optimizing your websites and your digital products for your users and for your KPIs.
Gotcha. Well, it's been very interesting hearing your opinions today, and I have a couple. Actually, I have a special question from you, from a
Mm-hmm.
previous guest on this podcast. So I always like to kind of pass the mic to the next guest.
Yeah.
So I just spoke to Will, and he asked for you. Let's see, if you could sit down with one person in the e-commerce marketing space, who would it be, and what would you ask them?
Huh. That's a very nice question. Let's see. Um, I met most people already, and of course, I have my friends in the industry, which is always good
Mm-hmm.
to sit down with, like Lucia van der Brink, Daphne Tiedemann, of course, my colleagues. But if there's one person I have not spoken to often yet, and I want to sit down with, um, let's say Ben LeBay. I've not met Ben LeBay in
Okay.
person yet. I spoke to him online. I have a lot of connection. We talk on LinkedIn, of course, but I've not met. That's one
Uh-huh.
person I've not met in person yet, and it would be great to see him once in life, in real life.
Nice. Yeah, I suppose from all the conferences and all the work you do, it makes sense that you would probably know most people already in the biz, but nice to know. And if you could meet him in person, what's something you would love to chat about like offline?
What I would check about offline,
Yeah.
regarding our work, or what do you mean?
Yeah, just anything like I know you've said you've messaged him on LinkedIn
Oh
already.
yeah,
Like if there was one thing you could like you're like, okay, I have 10 minutes on an elevator with Ben. What would you ask
yeah.
him?
Oh. Well, like I said, we do chat online, so
Yeah.
it would just be great to I guess get a beer and a burger and talk about life
Mhm.
in general. I would guess, or how he runs his agency.
Gotcha. Nice. And
Nice
maybe a
question.
last a last question for you. So we're gonna have some more guests coming on soon who are also
Yeah.
in the CRO space, many like yourself who do some consulting. So if you could leave a question for them to answer, it can be anything CRO related. So what question would you like our next guest to answer?
Yeah. I have a difficult one that comes to mind
Oh, I
now.
love it.
Um, so with my own company, Conversion Ideas, I want to help people get started and excel in conversion rate optimization for an affordable price. So it's really
Mhm.
aimed at those people that don't have an employer to pay for expensive business courses. So my courses sell
Mhm.
for 10, 15 euros. Um, but there's still one quest I'm stuck with. So I'm very curious if the next guest can
Okay.
solve it, and would be very interesting to hear that. Um, because I have a lot of people in my courses that finish the courses and then want to get into a CRO job. And then you run into two problems. The first one in markets that are still starting up, CRO is too small, or the people don't still just simply buy traffic and don't do any CRO at all. So they have a very hard time
Mhm.
convincing recruiters and companies to get them a CRO role. And in the more mature
Mhm.
markets, when you apply for a CRO role, the recruiter always wants a 1 or 2 year experience. So it's a very large group of very passionate, enthusiastic people that are ready to take on the world and improve digital products, but they cannot get
Yeah.
a job. And that's still a quest that I'm stuck with, and hopefully I can solve it somehow. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but if anyone has any idea, I would be very happy to hear it.
Gotcha. So, kind of, how can you get a start in CRO because the barrier to entry is either like too high or the startupy maybe can't afford it yet?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll be sure to, once we have that episode recorded, pass along the answer if they have a gem or pearl of wisdom that can hopefully help you on this quest as well.
That would be great. That's still something
Yeah.
I strive for, to help people uh, with what I love to do every single day.
Well, Ruben, it has been an absolute pleasure having you here today on Click to Buy. Again, if somebody wants to find you online, where would be the best place for them to find you and any of your services?
Yeah, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Always happy to have a
Mm-hmm.
chat there, or check my websites, conversionideas.com or onlinedialogue.com, and feel free to reach out. Happy to hear from
All
you.
right. Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to add the link in the show notes. Thanks again, Ruben. And this has been
Thank you.
another episode of Click to Buy. Till the next one.